guys, my name is Marta, welcome to my channel and welcome to my January wrap-up. In January I read a lot of books, so I am not going to make this intro too long and I am going to get to all of them. I don't know how I managed to read so much, probably because most of the stuff I read were plays. I wanted to read as extra reading for university, but still I had exams during the whole month of January, so it was hard for me to make time for reading, but still I managed to read a great amount of books and I am very happy to be able to share them all with you now. First, I'm going to start with the two that I do not own anymore because I didn't like them and I got rid of my copies. The first one was Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. It is a YA fantasy inspired by Russian mythology and it sounded amazing, but it was slightly a disappointment. It was pretty much a rip-off of the Grisha trilogy and I don't even really like the Grisha trilogy. I read it last year and it was very disappointing. I didn't like the characters, I didn't like how the plot was developed, and same thing with this one. And I think Wicked Saints was even worse because the characters had no personality and the author tried to make the main romance look like a enemies to lovers romance because the two main characters are supposed to be enemies, but they aren't, and the main character spends the whole book saying I shouldn't be attracted to him but I still am, and it's like very forced. I don't know if this makes sense at all, but yeah, I didn't like it. It was really bad and I won't continue with the trilogy. And the other book I didn't really enjoy, I didn't hate, but it wasn't for me, and it was Dead Voices by Catherine Arden. It is the second book in a quartet that Catherine Arden is releasing. They are spooky middle grades and each one takes place during a different season. This one, Dead Voices, is set during winter and our main cast of characters go to stay in this haunted resort, and yeah, it is haunted, it has spooky stuff and it was decent, but it wasn't for me. It is a spooky middle grade and I like my adult horror novels, so middle grades that have horror elements aren't just for me, so I decided to not continue reading the books and get rid of the first two books I own in the series. And now we are going to be tending to the books I do own, and I think I'm going to start with the French classics I read as extra reading. So if you do not care about French plays or French literature in general, because not all of these are plays but most are, skip to the number I will put down here and you will be able to hear about the other books I read during the month of January. But now we're going to be talking about all these French pieces of literature that I read. The first one was a reread because I read it a few months ago for class, but I wanted to reread it before the exam, and it is La Dame de Maxime by Feydeau. This is a vaudeville play and it was fun. I mean, it is a comedy, so it is fun. I had fun reading it. It was fun to analyze as well. And yeah, it is great. I would recommend it if you like reading comedies. Next, I read La Cantante by Eugene Ionesco. This is an absurd play that was amazing. I love absurd plays. They have a lot of nonsense that makes sense because it just makes sense in the context they were written, and fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I love this type of plays, and yeah, I would recommend it if you like absurd plays. So if you like Waiting for Godot, read this one because it is great. And while reading it, I realized that I had watched a fragment of the play a few years back and it brought me many flashbacks, and that was really fun thing. I don't know, I am weird maybe. And speaking of absurd plays, I also read Ionesco's in Rhinoceros. I don't know how to pronounce the French title when speaking in English, but yeah, let's ignore that. But yeah, this is another absurd play about this town where they start appearing a lot of rhinocerons. I don't know if that's even a word in English. I am starting to get very confused, but yeah, this is a symbol, and this rhinoceros, or however it's said in English, start invading the city, and it is supposed to be a symbol of the Nazis invasion of France and Europe during the Second World War. So fascinating, such a great discussion, and I love it. And it has a few dog-eared pages that I was supposed to put sticky tabs into, but I never did. And yeah, would recommend if you like absurd plays that you can analyze and feel like a scholar while reading. Another play I read, this one was more chill, and it is another vaudeville comedy, and it is Un chapeau de paille vital by La Vie. This is such a fun play that has a lot of nonsensical elements, and yeah, it is such a fun one. It is very short, so you can read it in one sitting, and I had a nice time reading it. And yeah, I have yet 3 more plays to talk about. One of them is La Guerre de Juan n'aura pas lieu de Yoandu. I can't pronounce French while speaking in English at the same time. My brain starts getting confused and things do not work right here, but yeah. This book is another fascinating play. I love this type of plays as well. They were written in the between World Wars period, and they used to use mythical Greek myths to explain the situation that was going on during that time period. I feel like I'm explaining the things I learned for the exam, and it is really funny, but still. This one symbolizes how the men were scared of the possibility of another war taking place in a few years, which actually happened when World War II started. And yeah, it is such a devastating play to read because you know what's going to happen, because you know the myth, and yeah, fascinating. 10 out of 10 would recommend if you want a play that will make you think but also will make you cry in some way. Maybe I'm just emotional, but these kind of things made me sad. And last French play I read was Whiskas by Jean-Paul Sartre. This was my first ever Sartre. My French is not working right now, but yeah. This play is about this man who dies, and he is in hell, and there in hell people start coming into his room and they do not have eyelashes, so they are not able to sleep, and they are condemned to live for the rest of the eternity with each other, hearing to each other's thoughts and creating an opinion about themselves based on what others say about them. Did I even make sense? Is my brain working today? I don't think it is. But yeah, fascinating to read about, a great to discuss, because I annotated to discuss it with myself because this wasn't even in my syllabus, but I wanted to read it. None of these were actually in my syllabus except for the first one I talked about. But yeah, fascinating. I want to read more of Sartre's. Yeah, can't wait to read more from him. The other play I read is in French but Norwegian, I think, and it is Un Maison de Poupée by Ibsen, or A Dollhouse in English. Yeah, I believe everyone knows what this is about, but this is a piece of this, and it discusses a lot of society issues that were going on during that time period. In this one, it explains the situation that women had to face during this era. And yeah, it is a great discussion, pretty feminist for its time, and it was enjoyable, but it was actually the one I enjoyed the least between all of these. And the 2 other French things I read were a novel and a novella. First one was a novella I also had to read for my course, so I didn't read it for pleasure, but it was still enjoyable, and it was Le Dernier Jour d'un Condamné by Victor Hugo. Would recommend. I don't know what else to say about this book. This is a really short classic novella by Victor Hugo, and we follow this man who is condemned to death, and we follow him during his last hours. And yeah, it is also a great discussion about death penalty and what this man has to face. We see him suffer, we see him struggle through this situation, and it is very painful to read but still amazing. It has a lot of beautiful quotes, and I want to reread it and annotate it. But yeah, fascinating, would recommend, and it is actually a good starting point if you want to read something by Victor Hugo, as it's pretty short and it's not as intimidating as Les Mis or The Hunchback of Notre Dame or any other of his works. And the last French classic I read was one that I read because I wanted to. It was recommended by my professor, so I decided to read it, and it is La Dame aux Camélias by Alexandre Dumas Fils. So the son of the Alexander Dumas that wrote the Three Musketeers and the Count of Monte Cristo. This book is very interesting because it was the book that influenced a lot of literature that came out during this era. It basically humanizes the figure of a prostitute, and we follow this man who goes to this auction where he buys a book that belonged to this woman that died, and he was a prostitute, and then a man calls to his door and he asks him to get him the book because he was in love with her, and he starts telling this first man I mentioned the story of the romance, and it is fascinating, such a great read, would recommend, and pretty readable in French, by the way, because I read it pretty fast and my French is good, but it is not perfect by any means, so yeah. And now that we're done with all the French literature, we're going to talk about the other books I read. First, we're going to start with a contemporary fun read I read during the last day of January, and it is This Winter by Alice Oseman. This is such a cute novella about Nick and Charlie and their Christmas day, and it is super cute. We see a discussion about Charlie's eating disorder, which is great to read about because these books are pretty young in the YA age range. So it is great to see that discussed here because it is great to tell people that if you're not okay, you have to reach out to someone, you have to seek help. So yeah, love to read about that here. And what else to say about this? It was really nice, really fun, and really enjoyable. Another YA I read, but this one not as enjoyable, was How the King of Elfheim Learns to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is a collection of short stories from Caradan's point of view and set in the world of Elfheim. We learn how he became the man he became. This is supposed to explain why he acts the way he acts, but honestly, I really like this. I love The Cruel Prince when I read it, though I think that if I read it now I wouldn't, because this one was just bad. This was completely unnecessary, and I believe Holly Black wrote it solely to make some money because people love Cardan. Because did I get anything interesting out of this? No. Did I need to read it? No. So why did I? I have no idea. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars because it was still fun to see the characters, but this was completely unnecessary, and if she continues to write any other books set in the world of The Cruel Prince, I won't buy them and won't read them because I am not reading books to get disappointed at this point of my life anymore. Next, I read the book that was the Dark Academy's book club pick for the month of January, and it was The Furies by Katie Lowy. This one I also gave 3 stars. I feel like my not classical reading during the whole month of January was just mediocre because I didn't read anything outstanding. This one follows a group of girls who go to this school and are in this arts program, and they are in this art history program, and have this teacher named Annabelle, a very fascinating teacher, and he makes them all go to this like secret class that he has after classes, and they start doing witchy stuff. This book wasn't great, to be honest. The characters were a mess. I was unable to distinguish them between each other, except for the protagonist, because we see the story through her point of view. But the other girls were basically the same person. I can't recall any of them by their name, and the story was also forgettable. I can only remember the atmosphere from this book because I found it really fascinating, and I also loved the art discussion because I haven't read many books that talk about art and art history, and it is something that really fascinates me and that I really like to learn and read about. So yeah, I tagged a few posts relating to art, but still this book wasn't amazing. It wasn't anything worth reading. So if you are interested, read it solely because it is Dark Academia. I don't think you're going to like it, to be honest. You might do, but I don't think it's one of the best ones that exist out there. The other 2 books I read in January are 2 classics. First, we're going to go with the modern classic, which is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. This was the first book I started in 2020 and probably my best read of the month. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was truly fascinating. I love Rebecca by the same author, and I also love her short story, The Birds, which I read for class last semester. And this one didn't disappoint me at all. We follow this man who, after his uncle dies, has to live with this woman named Rachel, who moves with him to his uncle's mansion, and he's very mysterious. Our main character thinks she killed his uncle, and he thinks that is very mysterious. I don't know what really happened. It is very ambiguous, and it has such a great dark gothic atmosphere, and I absolutely adored it. I love everything I've read by this author so far, and he continues to never fail me, so I will continue reading her novels. I cannot wait to read everything else he has out there. I would really recommend it if you like Rebecca, though having bear in mind that it is not as outstanding as that one, but it is still amazing. Would recommend it, especially for the atmosphere. And yeah, by the way, be aware that this one has an open ending, so if you don't like stories that do not have a close ending, I don't think you will like it, but still, I personally adored it, and I love this author so much. And last book I read in January was none other than Childhood Boyhood Youth by Leo Tolstoy. I read it for Emma and Caroline's Dickens versus Tolstoy's debate, which is going to take place every every 2 months during the next 4 years, and I find that very fascinating. And we're going to be reading all of Dickens and Tolstoy's works. So we started with Tolstoy's first novel, Childhood Boyhood Youth. This is a trilogy, a very fascinating one. As you can see by my tabs, I am very sad I did not tab during the first 30 pages because I didn't have the sticker tabs with me, but still, I really adored this novel. I love seeing our main character grow up and grow from a very innocent kid who just wants to be loved to this awful man that one cannot stand by the end of this work. But it also ends with a very hope note, because we see how he starts to regret everything he's done so far, and I find this book very fascinating. And I also find very fascinating that Leo Tolstoy never ended the trilogy. He pretended to keep on working on it and write about our main character's adulthood. So yeah, fascinating. 4 stars. I wish I could give it more, but it sadly wasn't so good at some points, but some things didn't let me give it those 5 stars, because yeah, sometimes our main character was a bit disappointing, and the way Tolstoy wrote about women was just not okay. But still, the thing I have to say that I love the most about this work were descriptions. I absolutely adored how Tolstoy related nature to our main character's feelings, how he sometimes used it to explain how our main character felt, and how it uses it as a metaphor as well. So yeah, great descriptions, great work, a good starting point from such a big important author in Russian and world literature in general. And yeah, I would really recommend this one as well. So that was all for today. Comment down below if you read any of these books, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. Don't forget to give this video a like too if you enjoyed it, and I hope your day is gone amazing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!